A second night of massive airstrikes on the Serbs. British Harriers set off a short while ago. The Pentagon says the attacks are severe. Explosions are being heard across Yugoslavia. Last night's airstrikes hit more than 40 targets. NATO says they'll go on, if necessary, until the Serb armed forces are destroyed.
This place, Kosovo, is right on the doorstep of Europe. It's right next door to Greece, to Italy, to places people are very, very familiar with in Britain. This is why we have to act. It's not that we enjoy the spectacle of using military force. We don't. We shrink from it. We've tried for months to avoid it. But we're doing it because we genuinely believe in the name of humanity and in the name of peace in this region. We have no alternative.
The renewed NATO assault has followed the same pattern as yesterday. As dusk approached, the planes began taking off from their bases in Italy. These stealth fighters were some of the first. More and more aircraft joined the circling armada, and out in the Adriatic, US ships were again firing salvos of cruise missiles. Then, at about 7 this evening, reports came in from Kosovo that a series of loud explosions had been heard near the capital, Pristina. From NATO headquarters, there was a brief announcement confirming the bombardment had resumed.
The first targets are the integrated air defence system of Yugoslavia. Those targets can be anywhere in the territory of Yugoslavia, not just in Kosovo, and of course we're going to go after them. But the second set are military targets within Kosovo itself, essentially the type of things that the Serb army uses to carry out its offensive in Kosovo, command and control, ammunition dumps, those type of things.
British cruise missiles were fired in anger for the first time in last night's attack. They were among more than 100 cruise missiles fired during the NATO operation. The initial strikes came from warships in the Adriatic, including the British nuclear-powered submarine HMS Splendid. Another was the American destroyer USS Gonzales, which has again been involved in tonight's attacks. Britain and its NATO allies have been assessing the success of their ferocious air onslaught, the largest operation undertaken in Europe since the end of the Second World War.
The United Nations Secretary-General Kofi Annan made it pretty clear last night that he was upset that the UN hadn't been involved in the decision over airstrikes, and that the Security Council should have been consulted if NATO had played it by the book of international law. Dennis Healey was a long-serving Labour Defence Secretary, and Lord Healey, I suppose, one of the few senior politicians around with first-hand memory of the last time there was a war in Europe.
Indeed.
What are your reservations about the NATO action?
I think it was a terrible mistake to attack a sovereign state without even consulting the United Nations. I think it will have, indeed has already had, a catastrophic effect on Western relations with Russia and China. For Yeltsin, it is a catastrophe because it strengthens his communist and nationalist opponents, and already describing it as a second Vietnam.